Every government on Earth is lying to you. Not about politics, not about money, but what's really out there. They agreed to one thing, never let you know the full truth. We're the ones they call when the truth breaks free. Enter the Foundation.
The first time SCP-507 shifted in front of me, it took the air out of the room. Not because of some huge flash of light or bone-twisting sound, there was neither. Just one sentence, cut in half by an impossible edit. And I'm telling you, Doc, if I ever end up in a universe where my student loans got... He froze. Not like someone pausing to think. Just stopped, mid-word, the got hanging between us as his lips stayed parted. Tommy, this universe's 507, sat across from me at the little metal table, one hand around his mug of lukewarm tea, the other on the deck of cards between us. His eyes were wide, fixed on something behind me that wasn't there. On my laptop, the tracking software chirped. A soft, innocuous ding. Loss of signal. SCP-507. The green dot representing his implant winked out. Right on schedule. 12 days, 7 hours, 19 minutes since his last displacement. Our nice little card game had been a stall tactic. We'd been waiting for this. 4, I finished reflexively, my mouth suddenly very dry. I'd been told what it looked like. I'd read the files. I'd watched the grainy security footage. It didn't feel like any of that. I leaned forward, forcing my voice to stay calm, clinical. 507? Can you hear me? Pupil dilation normal, no muscle tremor, no breath, no blink. The man in the orange jumpsuit sat in front of me like a paused video. I looked at the camera in the corner of his quarters. Red light on, streaming, recording. Then the light above us flickered, just once. That was new. The laptop chimed again. New signal detected. SCP-507. Location Site 19. I frowned. That was impossible. He was sitting right here, and also not. The green dot snapped back into existence. Same coordinates, same room. A gap of precisely 0.32 seconds logged between the two entries. My stomach dropped a little. Tommy? I tried again. He sucked in a breath, flinched, and slapped a hand over his heart. Forgiven, he finished, then blinked hard and looked around. Whoa, that was quick. I stared at him. You shifted just now. He squinted, like he was checking his own brain for buffering. I mean, I blinked? That count? Tracker logged a displacement. He frowned. How long was I gone? 0.3 of a second. He made a face. That's cheating. That doesn't even get me a snack break. I logged it anyway. Designation D0N-T8E-1 and yay. Estimated duration under 100 milliseconds. We would later file it away as an oddity in a career made of oddities, a glitch. Looking back, I think that was the first time something really went wrong. Not with him, with us, with reality. My name is Dr. Elaine Mercer, Level 3 researcher and, at the time, newly minted primary psychological liaison for SCP-507. That's Foundation speak for shrink with a clipboard and clearance form, assigned to babysit the multiversal tourism problem. The file they handed me was thick enough to stop a bullet. The cover sheet called him safe. The next 200 pages did their best to argue otherwise. Alternate realities, random displacements, fungal apocalypses, telepathic forests, smiley-faced things that really needed to stop being near his face. Half the log read like badly translated urban legends. The other half, like travel brochures, written by someone with clinical PTSD and a decent sense of humor. And underneath all that, one persistent note, appearing in slightly different wording in report after report. Subject shows no signs of deliberate malice. Subject complies with containment. Subject's cooperation is considered valuable. By Foundation standards, that made him a unicorn. The first time I met him, he was sitting on his bunk, knees spread, elbows on thighs, turning his keychain Rubik's Cube with the lazy focus of someone half bored, half bracing. He looked ordinary, Caucasian, early 30s, blonde, green eyes, slightly overweight, standard orange jumpsuit a little too tight across the middle, a cheap digital watch on one wrist, our custom shift alarm wrapped around the other, tracking collar at his throat, holstered rubber bullet pistol and knife on the wall hook beside his door like sad little decorations. He glanced up when I stepped in. "New face," he said. Hang on." He squinted at me with theatrical intensity. "Let me guess. Dr. Harper? No. You're more of a... Dr. Lee? Albright?" "Dr. Mercer," I said. "Psych. I'll be conducting your new baseline interviews." He sighed. "They sent a brain doc. Always a good sign. You got a first name, doc, or do I have to guess that too?" "Elaine." He perked up. "Nice. Classic. Okay, now you have to name me." "I already know your name, SCP-507. He waved that away. "Yeah, but that one's boring. Government issue. You gotta earn the real one." This I'd been warned about. "He won't give you his actual name," they'd said in the briefing. "He insists people come up with nicknames. It's a control thing, also attention-seeking. Don't let it derail you." But we were going to be spending a lot of time together, like it or not. And there's value in ritual. I looked him over. Scruffy, open face, wary eyes that still managed to look hopeful, thumbing that tiny cube like worry beads. "Fine," I said. "Grabknock the destroyer." His face split into a grin. "Yes," he hissed. Someone read the addenda. He hopped off the bunk and offered me a hand to shake, then visibly thought better of it and dropped it back to his side. 2 weeks since last shift?" I asked. 12 days, he said. "You people really don't like high fives after day 14. The last person who forgot that got lost," I reminded him gently. "Agent, you mentioned him in Addendum 507-00. His smile faded a little. "Yeah," he said. "I remember." He did. He remembered all of it. That was my job. To sort the memories that haunted from the ones that just hurt, and try to keep the haunted ones from metastasizing. It wasn't until weeks later, that I realized we'd been thinking about his affliction backwards. We thought of Tommy as the thing that moved. We never considered the possibility that the universe was what shifted around him. You don't get assigned to SCP-507 without reading Document 507-3B. It's not a single document so much as a hydra with appendices, a stitched-together graveyard of dimensional postcards. I read it in my office late one night, the light from my monitor turning the room into a box of stale blue. Desert universes, telepathic screaming plants, lunar domes where Earth hung fat and blue on the horizon, then set to reveal that the moon was home. A derelict city of cats that exhaled weaponized toxoplasma from their fur. A world of gray sludge and equalized, beaten humans where someone had surgically removed not just their teeth, but their joy. A reality made of candy, of gelatin, of nothing but sky and birds the size of office towers. Smiling faces in the dark. And threaded through, almost innocently, lines like this. Requests. A hug. Approved. Or requests. To see Dr. Clef more often. Approved. He'd asked for pudding, for heat-resistant clothing, for a pet cage, for therapy. He'd asked once to stay in a universe where he had fallen in love with a woman he couldn't explain. That one had nearly broken him. By the time I hit the entries for the Invalid Universe and the Coma City of Light, my scalp was prickling. 000-000-000. Invalid. Nowhere. I think I missed it this time. Followed by a note about motor impairment, a wristwatch that ticked loudly to reassure him time was still moving. Then, HY-077-2939. City of Light. Beings whose voices ruptured his eardrums and blinded him. Subject reports feeling coming undone. No physical injuries upon waking. And at the end, an addendum from Dr. Trukux about document corruption after an encounter with Trukuk. Sections altered, erased, technically never existed. I stared at that line for a long time. Technically never existed. People joked about how the Foundation broke causality before lunch and then went for coffee, like nothing happened. But this was the first time I'd seen it in writing, with the redactions still wet. When the daily signal check pinged 2 instances of SCP-507 the next week, I can't say I was entirely surprised. We found them both in his quarters. 2 blonde, slightly overweight men in orange, sitting cross-legged on the floor, sharing a packet of vegetarian MRE crackers like a couple of kids on a sleepover. They were laughing when I opened the door. No, that one had cats everywhere. Trust me. One of them was saying, "You'd remember the smell." The other snorted, "Trust you? My guy, you're the one who ate redacted because you thought it was pudding." They both looked up at me in perfect sync. "Hey, Doc," said the one on the left. "Welcome to the party," said the one on the right. I took it in. Identical faces, identical posture. Slight difference in how they wore the collar. Left hand 507 had his thumb hooked under it, like he was used to fiddling with it. Right hand 507 was palming the little Rubik's Cube. "Tracker picked up 2 signals," I said. which one of you is ours? They looked at each other. Then, perfectly synchronized, they both shrugged. We were just discussing that. Left. Call him 507A, said. C, here's the problem, said Right. 507B. We know how this place thinks. We love you guys. A added quickly, nodding at me. Really, big fans. But we also know there are at least 3 people on staff who see us and think lab mouse that can talk. Now, usually, you can't just cut open the lab mouse's head to see what's going on in there, because you want to keep studying it afterward, B said. But you've been handed a spare. And if we tell you which one's the spare, spread his hands, then we know who gets the scalpel, B finished. I opened my mouth, then closed it again. This is a containment facility, I said carefully. Our job is to secure anomalous phenomena and protect the people they might hurt, including you. B snorted. Doc, I say this with love, but there is no universe where the SCP Foundation is the gold standard of human compassion. Maybe in my world, A said thoughtfully. You remember that? With the sign language and the people who freaked out when I said hello? Honestly, they might be nicer. They started talking over each other, bouncing realities back and forth like shared bad dreams. The forest dome with the telepathic trees, which had started screaming the moment they recognized him. The city where everyone's lifespan was 24 hours and he'd become a wandering elder, a living myth, collecting generations like loose train tickets. The world of equalized gray people, and the one human who'd looked up at him with something like hope, only to be dragged away by a grinning enforcer. And the smiling man, that one they both fell quiet for. Guy in the dark, B said finally. Suit, sunglasses, too many teeth. Smells like cheap cologne and bad decisions. Asked me, why did you do this? Last time, like I'd shot him. Business suit, A added. Impossibly wide smile. Said, back so soon? The second time I landed there? They exchanged a look. Okay, I said quietly. Which of you met him with the brown stuff? B grimaced. That would be me. You noticed his suit? A asked. I noticed the holes in it, B said. And the leaking. He shuddered. I watched them carefully. Under the banter, under the shared gallows humor, there was a mirror of fear. Not just of where they went, but of what was starting to follow them back. Signal check every hour, I said. Both of you answer if called. If one of you drops, the other goes under observation immediately. Until one of you shifts, you're confined here, together. And if he shifts and I don't, A asked, jerking a thumb at B, then we know which one of you is ours, I said. And neither of you gets the scalpel. Not on my watch. They looked at each other. See, B said. Told you we might have lucked out with this one. Yeah, grumbled, but he smiled. They both turned that smile on me, green eyes crinkling at the corners. What? I asked. They spoke together, still not telling you which is which. B disappeared mid-smirk. No flash, no sound, just an empty patch of floor where he'd been. I flinched. Aside. Guess that answers that question, he said. Not the one I wanted answered, I muttered. Later, when I reviewed the security footage, I saw something none of us noticed in the moment. For 3 frames, an eighth of a second, after B disappeared, and before the timestamp ticked forward, the image glitched. The pixels around 507A's face smeared, sharpening into something like a huge white smile. Teeth, too many teeth, stretching from ear to ear behind his eyes. Then it was gone. Video compression artifact, Tech said. Sure, if you didn't already have the word smiling in your head like a splinter. After the dual 507 incident, Oversight did what Oversight does. They panicked quietly and threw resources at the problem. More sensors in his room, higher resolution implant telemetry, a second redundant tracker buried deeper in his shoulder, a rotating escort schedule with stricter timing. No physical contact after day 14 reinforced, in bold, underlined, highlighted in HR memos. And of course, more counseling. Hey, he said, stretching out on the couch in my office like he'd been coming for years, not weeks. So, Doc, how existential do you want to get today? As existential as you feel the need to be, I said, flipping open my notebook. Tell me about your dreams. He waggled his eyebrows. Forward, buy me dinner first. Tommy, yeah. He laced his fingers behind his head, staring at the ceiling. They're different now. Different how? It used to be like shuffle mode, random playlists. I close my eyes and boom, I'm back in Candyland or Gelatin Hell, or that time I spent 3 months getting yelled at by British people who were very sure they weren't British, you know. Greatest hits. Some of those were my favorite logs to read, I'll admit. Society for Containment of the Paranormal. Aberrancy Security Vault. Half the multiverse apparently decided the best way to deal with weirdness was patent paperwork and committees. Comforting, in a way. But lately, he went on, it's like I'm not in the dreams. I'm looking at something from a distance. Through glass, maybe? He swallowed. There's a city, he said. Far away, but close enough that it hurts to look at. It's bright. Like someone made buildings out of pure light and bent them into shapes that don't make sense. And there are these things walking around. Hiyo 772939, the City of Light. Coma for 42 days. No physical injuries. Same beings? I asked softly. Yeah, he whispered. I think so. But this time, they're not coming toward me. They're busy. Doing what? He frowned, eyes unfocused. Talking, he said slowly. Arguing, maybe. They're pointing at a line, like a crack, running through the air. And every time they touch it, I feel weird. Weird how? Like someone's sliding my file folder between drawers, he said immediately. Like reality's trying to decide which cabinet I belong in. I jotted that down. How do you feel when you wake up? like I've been erased and written back in, he said. Like I almost wasn't. His voice had gone very small. Doc, he added after a second. Do you ever get the feeling that you only exist because someone forgot to cross out your name? He wasn't the first anomalous human to ask me something like that. He was the first to sound like he might be right. It got worse with the next glitch. 3 weeks after the dual 507 incident, the alarm in my office started chirping on its own. Signal mismatch detected. SCP-507. I checked the console. The implant's ping was steady. Heart rate normal. Location, his quarters. But the metadata attached to the ping, little invisible tags of "this is how reality says this should look," had shifted. It was like someone had picked up his dot on the graph and put it back almost exactly where it had been. Almost. The differences were microscopic. Different random seed for the implant's encryption handshake. Millisecond discrepancies in the timestamp cascade. Enough that the system flagged it as not quite the same subject. I went to his room. He was sitting on the bed, staring at his hands. Okay, he said as soon as I walked in. Something's off. Define off, I said. He held up his right hand. You see that? He asked. I looked. 5 fingers, bitten nails, faint half-moon scar across the knuckles from where he'd tried to teach himself knife tricks in a gelatin world and cut himself on an actual metal thing for the first time in weeks. Yes. Good, he said. Because I don't. His arm trembled. I mean, I feel it, he said. I can move it, make a fist. But when I try to think about how many fingers I have, it's like my brain stalls out at 4.5. Like the idea of 5 keeps slipping. I watched him flex his hand. All 5 fingers moved. It was only later, during a routine test, that we realized his fingerprints had changed. Not all of them. Just the right index finger. Whorls and ridges altered enough to fail a match against his own previous prints. Not enough to match anyone else's. DNA still said 507. Retinal pattern still said 507. The implant said close enough in a sullen tone and stopped complaining. But the note went in his file anyway. Minor biometric discrepancy noted, possibly due to cumulative interdimensional exposure. Right. Or maybe his metaphor had been more accurate than we liked. Maybe his file really was sliding between drawers. I wasn't there for entry 579-62C-E44. I only saw the video. Security footage from the Site 19 director's office, wide angle, time-stamped exactly 3 days before the Foundation had any record of SCP-507 existing. The office lights were off when he appeared. Cater containment uniform, black tactical gear, a patch on his chest with a version of the Foundation logo I'd never seen. A sigil embroidered under it that made my eyes skip. He moved like he knew the place, like he belonged there. He walked around the desk, typed something into the director's terminal with muscle memory ease, then turned the camera deliberately and stared straight into it. He looked older, not by much. 3 years, maybe 5. The lines around his mouth were deeper, the green in his eyes a shade duller. But it was him. He leaned close, filling the frame. "Okay," Video 507 said quietly. "If this works, I need you to listen to me. This is going to look like a breach, but it's not. Not yet." He rattled off coordinates I didn't recognize, names of universes by designation that didn't appear anywhere in Document 3B, words like anchor drift and failure cascade and class apotheosis event. Then he said something. The audio glitched. The transcript just had. Data restricted by order of O5 Council. When the video resumed, he was leaning back, the ghost of a smile on his face. "And that," he said, "should be enough to get you to take me seriously. In about 15 years. He checked his watch. "From your perspective, anyway." He walked to the office door. "Oh," he added, glancing back. "Do not let the research department convince you to turn me into a guidance system. No matter how good their maps look, they're wrong. I'm not a compass. I'm the margin of error." He vanished. 3 seconds later, the door opened and Director Moose walked in, turned on the lights, and went about her day, unaware that anything had happened. When Site Archives scrubbed through the digital security logs years later, they found the clip spliced into the feed, time-stamped before the system had technically been installed. The only reason 507 wasn't terminated on the spot was because the max clearance timestamp metadata said the O5 Council already knew what he would say and had rubber-stamped it retroactively. I didn't know any of that until much later. What I did know, on the day everything finally snapped, was this. Tommy was sitting on the floor of my office, back against the wall, hands shaking, and his shift timer had just ticked past 14 days. "Don't touch him," the protocol said. He was crying. "I don't want to go back there," he whispered. "Anywhere but there." "Back where?" I asked. He squeezed his eyes shut. "City of Light," he whispered. "They're angry this time, Doc. Not just at the crack. At me." "Have you shifted there again?" "Dream," he said. "I think. Or preview." They were closer. I could hear them even before they spoke. Like my bones were an antenna. He pressed the heels of his hands into his eyes. "I can hear it when they say my designation," he whispered. "Not 507, something longer. But when I wake up, all I remember is the feeling." "What feeling?" "Like I'm a typo someone refuses to fix." The shift alarm on his wrist beeped. The implant ping in my pocket buzzed. "Time window just opened," I said quietly. "We should go back to your room. Less chance of you ending up inside something solid. If you vanish from a known coordinate." He hugged his knees tighter. "Doc," he said, "stay with me?" "That's the plan," I said. He looked up, eyes raw. "No," he said. "I mean, when it happens. Just for a second. Just hold on." My brain recited the protocol like a litany. No physical contact with SCP-507 after 2 weeks post-displacement. Violation risks unintentional displacement of Foundation personnel. It's been exactly 14 days, he said quickly, because of course he knew the rule. Safe zone ends tomorrow. Right now, I'm still in the green. He wasn't wrong. Please, he whispered. I'd read the file on agent number lost in some unnamed reality where expunged, no retrieval. Family told he died in the line of duty. I'd also read the file on Universe 99 PUT124J. The impossibly beautiful place he'd had to be talked down from killing himself over. He was not the only one who risked breaking over interdimensional grief. I made a decision. Okay, I said. I moved to sit beside him, our shoulders almost touching. I held out my hand, palm up. He stared at it like it was a live grenade. Then, slowly, he put his hand in mine. His grip was warm and clammy and far stronger than I would have guessed. Thank you, he said, voice cracking. The shift, when it came, wasn't like the others. No pause, no freeze frame, no flicker, and then nothing. The world tilted. One moment I was in my office, beige walls, ugly couch, the faint hum of the air system. The next, everything buckled as if someone had grabbed the universe like a bedsheet and snapped it. I was still holding Tommy's hand, but the office was gone. We dropped into darkness, not the gentle dark of a room with the lights off. A thick, smothering absence of light that felt occupied. Something was breathing nearby. Slow, wet pulls of air, like someone trying to inhale through a soaked towel. Tommy's fingers crushed mine. Oh no, he whispered. Not here. Not again. Flashlight, I said automatically, my training kicking in even as my heart hammered in my throat. You have your flashlight. He fumbled at his belt with his free hand, muttering curses, then thumbed it on. A narrow beam of light cut the dark. It hit fabric first, black suit, crisp, perfectly fitted. A white shirt underneath, stained in places with something that looked dark even in the harsh beam. The beam traveled up, tie, collar, the lower part of a face, a mouth, too wide, too deep, stretched into a grin that seemed agonizing but held, teeth perfectly white and perfectly wrong. The beam caught on sunglasses perched over where eyes should be. Brown liquid, thick and sluggish, oozed from under the frames, tracking down waxy cheeks, dripping off the jaw. The smiling man was leaning in so close that our noses nearly touched. Back so soon? He asked. His voice was pleasant, normal, Midwestern, maybe. Somewhere between insurance salesman and youth pastor. Brown drops hit the floor between my knees with dull, wet sounds. Tommy screamed and killed the light. Our fingers nearly crushed each other. Somewhere in the dark, that pleasant voice asked, "Why did you do this?" I couldn't breathe. I didn't, Tommy stammered. I didn't shoot you there. That wasn't, I only ever... Why did you do this? The man repeated. And now, there was something under the words. Not anger. Something worse. Something like grief. The breathing all around us grew louder. Not just one presence, many. "Flashlight," I whispered. "Turn it back on." "Are you insane?" Tommy hissed. "Yes," I said. "Clinically certified. Turn it on." He fumbled, thumbed the switch. Light flared. We were alone. No smiling man, just an empty corridor stretching away into darkness in both directions. The floor beneath us was smooth, cold stone, damp in places. The air smelled faintly of antiseptic and something sweet rotting underneath. "Doc," Tommy breathed. "Doc, we are so far out of my usual league here." "Which designation is this?" I asked. 125-28P-OS 4-3, maybe, he said shakily. "No, too dry. Could be S43-51U-P09, but..." He stopped. "Wait," he whispered. "No, this isn't any of them." The implant at my shoulder pinged. Not the usual soft acknowledgement. A sharp, shrill tone I'd never heard before, like an EKG flatlining. My vision blurred for a second, then snapped back into focus. The corridor was gone. We were standing in a forest. Trees towered above us, leaves whispering in a wind I couldn't feel. Dappled light pooled on mossy ground. A bird called somewhere in the distance. For a moment, it was peaceful. Then the trees started screaming. It wasn't sound, strictly speaking. No movement of air. Just sudden, raw agony lancing across my mind, like someone had jammed a live wire into my thoughts. Hungry hurts. Hurts hurt. Why? I clapped my hands over my ears by reflex, even though that did nothing. Tommy staggered, dropping the flashlight. It bounced off a root and rolled, beam spinning dizzy circles through the undergrowth. "This one," he gasped. "I know this one. 9E2-66V-7HG. The forest. They remember. They..." Yeah, more voices joined the chorus. Every leaf, every blade of grass, every root underfoot. "You ate us, you ate us, you ate us." "I was starving," he shouted into the green. "I had to." The screaming didn't stop. It intensified. For a moment, I forgot I was human. Forgot I had a body. There was only the thin, quivering thread of my identity being scraped raw across an ocean of plant pain. Then, like someone flipping a channel, it had cut. We were standing on cracked concrete. The air was hot and still, thick with the stink of burned plastics and melted rubber. Buildings around us listed, missing chunks, somehow still standing. Above, the sky was a washed-out purple with no stars. "This is new," Tommy said weakly. I swallowed, throat raw from screaming I hadn't actually done. "Where are we?" I asked. His implant pinged again. My pocket buzzed. I pulled out my handheld tracker. The screen, which should have shown a single line of metadata, designation, coordinates, vitals, was full. Rows and rows of universe codes scrolled past, each tagged with a tiny timer, some counting up, some counting down. In the corner, a line of text blinked in angry red. Anchor drift exceeded tolerance. Corrective routing in progress. Okay, I said, because sometimes the only thing to do is narrate. That's bad. You think? Tommy said. Something moved on a rooftop across the street. A humanoid figure, lanky and wrong, its body composed of angular planes, like someone had tried to approximate a person using only road signs. It watched us silently, head tilted. Okay, nope, Tommy said. We are not making new friends today. He grabbed my arm. The world lurched. We fell through realities like static. A basketball court where 6 wildly different species played a game that looked like basketball only because of the hoops. A sea pouring through the ruins of a dead city, black fish shapes moving in the depths. A casino full of slot machines that dispensed messages instead of money. One of them spat out a slip that read, in neat block script, "You are off by 1. A silent city of mimes, hands clamping over ears as we appeared, duct tape stretching toward my mouth. A room full of corpses that rearranged themselves between flickers of a bad fluorescent, crowding closer every time the light blinked. The glass dome of a zoo enclosure. Human faces on the other side of the glass watching us with bored curiosity. The gray equalization city, monochrome people shuffling past, one of them jerking its head up to look at me with eyes that briefly saw before huge hands yanked it back. We didn't spend more than seconds in each. Shift, flicker, drop. It was less like traveling and more like being dragged. Through all of it, the tracker in my hand screamed quietly, scrolling warnings. And then, all at once, it went silent. We landed on soft grass. The air smelled beautiful. That's the only word I have for it. Every inhale painted my lungs with warmth, with safety, with something so deeply right my eyes stung. The sky above us was the color of sunrise and sunset layered together. The horizon was a collage of every landscape you've ever wanted to see. I knew where we were before Tommy made the first sound. He made a noise halfway between a laugh and a sob. I followed his gaze. She was standing on the crest of a small hill, silhouetted against that impossible sky. You know how memory is. It rounds off people's edges, makes them prettier, more symmetrical, more unreal. She didn't look like that. She looked like a person. Hair a little messy from the breeze, one knee of her pants grass-stained, the kind of face you forget until she smiles, and then you never do. She smiled. Of course, Tommy whispered. Of course, you would. He let go of my hand. I stayed very still. He took a step toward her. She took one toward him. They met halfway, eyes shining. They spoke. I couldn't hear a word. Their mouths moved. Their expressions changed. Surprise, delight, concern, stubbornness. But whatever bridge of understanding stretched between them didn't cross to me. I wasn't part of this conversation. I was an afterthought in a universe that had been waiting just for him. Time got strange. Maybe it was minutes, maybe hours. All I know is that my heart hurt with every gentle, effortless motion she made, because I could see on his face that in all the horror and absurdity he lived through, this was what had nearly broken him. Love. Simple, clean, unweaponized. They stood very close now. He reached up, hesitant, fingers hovering by her cheek, like he was afraid she'd dissolve if he touched her. She covered his hand with hers and pushed it against her skin. I looked away. It was a small mercy, in retrospect, because when the crack opened, it opened in the sky. A jag of black tore across the impossible colors, wide and jagged, like someone had slashed the heavens with a box cutter. Everything lurched. Tommy stumbled. The woman looked up, eyes blazing, and shouted something at the sky in that unlanguage of theirs, every syllable like birdsong and thunder at once. She turned and shoved him. He fell. Not physically, not backward, just away. He reached for her. So did I. For one wild second, my fingers brushed hers. Her eyes locked on mine. They were full of fury. Not at me. At whatever had its hooks in him. Then the world twisted, and she was gone. We slammed into the white city like a meteor. Light stabbed my eyes. Not brightness, structure. Shapes that should not exist. Angles that stuttered across my visual cortex like error messages. I think I screamed. I know I vomited. My ears filled with a roaring sound that wasn't sound, just my nervous system protesting. I saw them anyway. Two enormous beings striding out of the impossible architecture. They were humanoid, vaguely, limbs in approximately the right places, but their edges blurred and reasserted in multiple dimensions at once, like someone had drawn them with every geometry tool in existence and then lent them depth. Where their faces should have been was a shifting arrangement of facets and planes, each reflecting a different sky. When they spoke, the first word tore my hearing to static and put me on my knees. I felt my eardrums rupture. I felt my eyes bleed. I felt my heart beating wrong. Through all that, one hand clamped around mine like a vice. Tommy. His mouth moved. He was screaming something at them. Stop it. He's not yours. I didn't hear the words. I felt their outlines. One of the beings turned the full enormity of its presence toward him. A stream of images rammed into my brain. Lines of universes like threads, weaving through some unimaginable loom. Points where threads crossed, knotted, tangled. One thread, ours, fraying at the edges. A small, stubborn knot labeled not in language, but in meaning. Anomalous persistence. Tommy. The being reached toward that knot. My vision went white, then black, then something in between. A sense, more than a sentence, you were not meant to persist. You are the remainder in a division that should have had none. You are error. Another sense, overlapping, we have used you. You are convenient. You move where the weave is thin. You show us where the crack widens. Tommy's grip crushed my fingers. He was yelling something back at them, full of ragged defiance. Another sense. Others have seen you and mistaken function for purpose. They will try to fix you, to pin you. If they succeed, the crack freezes. The weave tears. Your line ends. Many end. I choked on my own breath. I don't think I was supposed to understand any of this, but something, somewhere, had decided we'd already seen too much to make ignorance kind. I felt another presence, not like the light beings, smaller, sharper, smelling faintly of ozone and burning paper. A memory, overlaid on this moment. 507 in the director's office, older, wearing black. I'm not a compass. I'm the margin of error, the light being leaned closer. My vision exploded into fractals. One last sense, like a blade laid gently against my throat. If you try to correct the error, you will break the equation. Let it be wrong. Let him wander. Tommy's hand slipped. We fell. I woke up in Medical Bay C with a headache that felt like someone had unspooled my brain, ironed it, and shoved it back in slightly misaligned. Overhead, the infirmary lights hummed comfortingly. Monitors beeped. A nurse was saying something about elevated neural activity, and we'll have to clear that with Site Command, Doctor. A familiar voice cut through the fog. You are not sticking a Class A in my patient before I've even told her what happened. I turned my head. O5-square was standing beside my bed. I knew it was O5-square because I'd seen her once before, from a distance, and because everyone else in the room was standing a little too straight. She looked tired. Dr. Mercer, she said. How's your head? Loud, I croaked. Understandable. Tommy was in the next bed over. I could see his hand dangling off the side, IV taped to the back. He was unconscious, face slack, brow furrowed, even in sleep. He's fine, she said quickly. Physically, same as last time. Last time, I repeated. The Light City, she said. He's been there before. You've read the file. You knew, I whispered. We knew some of it. She folded her hands behind her back. Here's the situation, Doctor, she said. You and SCP-507 appear to have experienced a multi-stage forced displacement cascade. Something, possibly related to, possibly to an external actor, attempted to reroute his shifts through a series of universes at high speed. That process was interrupted. By what? I asked. Her mouth twitched. By the same thing that patched the crack last time, she said. As far as we can tell, we don't have words for them. I imagine he will come up with some colorful nicknames when he wakes. I laughed weakly. They think he's in error. Her eyes sharpened. What did they show you? She asked softly. Threads, I said. Lines crossing. A crack. Him as leftover. remainder. And us as idiots about to divide by 0. I tried to sit up. The nurse made a strangled noise and pushed me gently back down. They told me, I went on, ignoring the protest, that if we tried to fix him, we break everything. That anchoring him, turning him into a tool, would lock the crack in place and tear the weave. I wasn't sure exactly what that meant in human terms, but I'd seen enough multiversal disaster scenarios in the archives to guess. 05 watched me, expression unreadable. And if we do nothing? She asked. He keeps wandering, I said. It hurts him, it scares him, it puts us at risk. But the crack keeps sliding, never quite stabilizing. The error never propagates. You believe them? Yes, I said simply. She nodded once. Then we have a problem. Only one? I muttered. The problem, she said, is that the Foundation does not like uncorrected errors. Our entire existence is predicated on the idea that we find anomalies and put them in boxes until they stop making the universe worse. Sometimes we put them in boxes until they do make it worse, I said before I could stop myself. A nurse hissed softly, like I'd just blasphemed in church. 05-square didn't flinch. Sometimes, she agreed. We are not perfect. We are very large. Large systems tend to make mistakes when they try to fix mistakes. We looked at each other for a long moment. You're going to wipe this, I said. Most of it, she said. Your brain isn't designed to hold what you've seen. The longer you remember clearly, the more likely you are to develop complications. We have enough chaotic good wildcards in this organization without adding untreated multiversal trauma. I thought of Dr. Clef, of his tight, unreadable face after his own private shift with Tommy, of the way he'd started avoiding me in the halls. And him? I asked, nodding toward 507. We've tried amnesticizing him before, she said. It sticks, and then the next universe rubs holes in it. He remembers enough. We can blunt the edges. We can't stop the bleeding entirely. She sighed. I will recommend, she said carefully, that any proposals to weaponize or formalize SCP-507's shifts be delayed, lost in bureaucratic limbo, misfiled, but I cannot guarantee that will work forever. There are too many bright minds here with too little appreciation for margins of error. Then we make them forget, I said. She raised an eyebrow. Doctor, you're going to wipe my memory, I said. Fine, but before you do, I'll write my report. I'll classify it where it should go, and I'll mislabel it on the way. It was a stupid idea. It was also the only one I could think of. 507's file is already corrupted from the incident, I said. You said it yourself. Documents altered, technically never existed. If some of the more ambitious proposals for using him as a navigation system just happened to end up in the same black hole. It will look like more of the same, she finished. Yes, that's reckless. Yes, unethical, arguably, and potentially catastrophic if we need those ideas someday to avert a disaster. I thought of the woman on the hill shoving him away from the crack. I think the disaster is what those ideas cause, I said. She searched my face. Why? She asked. Why risk your career, your clearance, your mind for one anomalous man? I looked at Tommy. He was frowning in his sleep, lips moving like he was arguing with someone only he could see. Because someone has to be kind to the man who carries the error, I said. I wasn't sure if I was quoting the light beings or adding my own spin. Didn't matter. O5 closed her eyes for a moment. When you wake up, she said quietly, you will remember that SCP-507 went on a shift. You accidentally brushed his sleeve within the safe period, and you experienced a brief, disorienting displacement to a reality with harmless anomalies. You will have no memory of the City of Light or the crack or their warnings. Your impulse to protect him may linger, but its justification will not. Will you remember? I asked. Yes, she said. Will you act on it? She smiled. Not a big smile, not a smiling man's smile, just a small, tired quirk. I will allow certain errors, she said, against my better judgment. The nurse moved in with the syringe. I didn't fight it. As the world blurred, I heard her say, very softly, almost to herself, let it be wrong. When I woke up, my head hurt, and my notes were incomplete. I knew I'd gone somewhere with SCP-507. I knew it hadn't been fun. My hand ached in a way that suggested I'd been gripping something too hard for too long. But when I tried to summon the details, all I got were impressions. Light, pain, a woman's face I couldn't quite remember. I had a report on my desk in my handwriting, half finished. It detailed a multi-stage shift cascade, notes about anchor drift and implant telemetry, and a stern recommendation against any attempts to formalize SCP-507's capabilities as a controlled navigation or transport system. Underlined twice. The sections where I'd tried to explain why I felt so strongly about that were messy. Starts of sentences that trailed off mid-word. Paragraphs crossed out in red with notes like incoherent, possible, mnestic interference. In the margins of one page, I'd doodled a little stick figure with a wide, exaggerated smile and sunglasses. I drew a tiny line through it. My cursor hovered over the proposal queue for his file. There were already submissions from colleagues. Exploratory structured displacement mapping. Potential use for rapid response containment teams. Paired implant experiments to test mass limit of co-displacement, all flagged pending O5 review. All weirdly attached to corrupted archive nodes. When I tried to click on them, I got error messages. File not found, refer to backup. There were no backups. Huh, I said aloud. Then I did what any good mid-level researcher does when something skates the edge of their clearance. I shrugged, wrote a bland summary that wouldn't offend anyone, and filed it under interesting. but currently impractical. Then I went to see my patient. Tommy was sitting on his bunk, flipping through a stack of old Golden Age superhero comics. He looked up as I stepped in. "Doc," he said, grinning, "you're not dead. Congratulations." "High praise," I said. "How are you feeling?" "Like I got hit in the head with something very important," he said cheerfully. "But I can't remember what, so it's fine. Just another day in the life of old Grabnock." He set the comic aside. "Seriously, though," he added, "I know they did the brain scrub thing. I mean, I asked them to. But I still remember bits." He tapped his temple. "Like what?" I asked. He squinted. "There was light," he said slowly, "and a crack, and some kind of cosmic HR department arguing over whether I was supposed to exist." He laughed, but there wasn't much humor in it. "And you," he added. "Me?" "You yelling at something I couldn't see," he said. "Or maybe I could. I don't know. It's like trying to remember a dream where you're also the wallpaper." He rubbed his eyes with the heel of his hand. "And this," he added, digging into the pocket of his jumpsuit. "This was in here when I woke up." He handed me a folded piece of paper. It wasn't foundation stock. The fibers were wrong. Too smooth, too strong. It felt like something that had never seen a tree. The writing on it wasn't in any alphabet I recognized. It looked like a series of tiny geometric shapes, crushed together, circles within triangles, intersecting lines, little bursts of dots. I stared at it. As I did, the shapes shifted, not literally. The ink didn't move, but my brain tried to map them into something it understood. For a second, just a second, they resolved into English. "Don't fix the error. Be kind to the man who carries it." Then it was shapes again. I blinked. "Anything?" Tommy asked. "Abstract art," I lied. He shrugged. "Figured. Feels important though, you know. Like one of those fortune cookies that actually knows what it's talking about." I refolded the note. "Mind if I keep this?" I asked. "Be my guest," he said. "If it starts whispering coordinates into your ear, though, give it back. I'm the multiversal chew toy, remember? Gotta keep the brand consistent." I slipped the paper into my pocket. We sat quietly for a few moments. "Hey," he said again, more softly. "Can I ask you something weird?" "Always." "When we were wherever we were," he said, gesturing vaguely at the air, "did I do something brave?" The question took me off guard. "What makes you ask that?" I said. He shrugged, suddenly shy. "I don't know," he said. "I keep getting this feeling, like I stood up to something I really shouldn't have. Like I don't know, mattered for a second, in a big way, and then it all got rubbed out." He looked at his hands. "I would just like to know," he said quietly, "if I was ever anything other than the punchline." I thought of him standing between me and beings of unbearable light, fingers crushing mine, screaming defiance into a geometry that didn't have a word for self-sacrifice. "Yes," I said. He looked up. "You were," I said simply. "That's good," he said. He smiled. It was a small smile. Human. Imperfect. Edges cracking a little around the eyes. "Guess I can die happy someday then," he said. "Not on my schedule," I said. He snorted. "Hey, Doc." "Yes?" "Next time I shift," he said, "try not to grab me, okay? I like you and all, but I don't want to be the reason you end up in Candyland with the screaming trees." "I'll do my best," I said. I didn't add that I had every intention of continuing to break that rule if he asked. He picked up his comic again. The shift alarm on his wrist beeped quietly. 4 days since the last one. 15 until the no-touch rule kicked in again. For now, he was anchored. For now, this version of the universe still had him. My implant pinged in my pocket. Normal, for now. "Hey, Doc," he said, as I turned to go. "Yes?" "If I ever end up somewhere nice again," he said, not looking up from the page, "I hope you do too, even if it's not the same nice." "Me too," I said. He waved a hand without turning around. "Don't let the universe fix me," he added casually. "I have a good thing going, being wrong." The hairs on the back of my neck stood up. "Who told you that?" I asked. He frowned, flipping a page. "I dunno," he said. "Feels like something I saw on a slot machine, maybe. You know how it is." "Yeah," I said softly. "I do." I stepped out into the hallway. The door clicked shut behind me. For a moment, I stood there, hand on the folded note in my pocket, the echo of that impossible city bright behind my eyes, even through the haze of drugs and official forgetfulness. "Let it be wrong," I whispered. Somewhere in his room, SCP-507 laughed at something in a comic book. A few minutes later, he shifted. Security cameras caught it. One frame he was there, the next frame he wasn't. No flickers, no glitches, no smiling faces in the pixels. Just an empty bunk and a half-finished sentence in the air. This time, when it happened, I did exactly what I'd promised. I didn't reach out. I let the margin of error fall out of the world. And I hoped, fiercely, selfishly, that wherever he landed, at least for a little while, it would be somewhere beautiful.